To kick off, let's review the basics that you should get out of today's Cvent training. The first thing I like to highlight is the incredible help and support that is provided with your Cvent license. I'll show you where to access this upon logging into your account, but Cvent's really made searching for resources incredibly easy. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can always reach out directly to an expert by either opening a case, chatting with them via instant message, or requesting a call. Wanting to get you familiar with the terminology that Cvent uses, you're really creating for each individual event its own event website as well as a registration process. These components can either be incredibly simple, where you barely have an event website and your registration process is just collecting first name, last name, email, or these could be built out to be incredibly robust to support much more complex events. When I mentioned building that complex registration process to support your needs, that will lead you to turning on certain features. And so there are many within Cvent that you can utilize, but the two that I like to highlight that are used the most often are sessions. So if you know your event breaks down into different sessions throughout the day, that's a feature you would want to enable. The same is true for guests. You might want the primary registrant to add their friends and family who they're bringing, or you might not need that. The good thing is you have full control to customize this process. Really thinking of Cvent as your event management application, we can move into event emails that might be sent out from the system. So that might be when somebody registers, they would get a confirmation message right away. Another example of an event email might be a know before you go message a couple days before the event, as well as sending out a survey once the event has actually concluded. Really get feedback for that event so you can make it better for next year. While majority of our events are free, we can set it up to collect money for your event. There's also some functionality around fundraising events, but I do need to mention there are many things that need to be set up correctly, not even on the Cvent side, to make sure that money's coming through the foundation correctly. So if that is something you're interested in, you would need to work with our advancement office to make sure you're collecting those donations correctly. Once your event is actually launched and folks are registering, you can keep using Cvent again as that event management application. Some things that might help you do that is the invitee management piece. So the ability to log in and modify your registrant's information. You can also pull reports from Cvent. So if you'd like a list of your registrants or maybe the amount of money that you've collected, you can run those reports and export them to Excel. Continuing with that mindset of Cvent being an event management application, really helping you from those early stages of planning all the way to after your event's concluded, there's some features that will help you actually on the day of your event. So less utilized, but you are able to make your name badges directly within Cvent. But more heavily adopted, we have OnArrival app as well. It is a free app that you can download on your phone, which means tracking registrations is really easy. I highly, highly recommend this. And it really takes your data from knowing who's registering for my event to who's actually showing up. Much more powerful, actionable information that you can use. Not to mention, it makes the check-in process really easy for your attendees. Let's look at creating your first Flex event together by cloning a template. If you haven't already bookmarked the eCom homepage, I'd highly encourage that you do. That URL is cu.edu/ecom. To view available templates, you can navigate from our eCom website by hovering over Guidelines in the top navigation. Under that, you can click into our eCom event templates. We've made 6 different Cvent Flex templates available to users to clone and customize for their events. To start, we have 2 simple event templates. We then move into our more intermediate event templates that have a few more design elements. And finally, some more advanced event templates. I would not advise starting with one of these your first time using Flex. This page allows you to preview the event website, see the name of the template for when you go to clone it, as well as preview the event. So you can actually test the event form up until the summary page to get a better feel for the template you're about to clone. Login to Cvent, I'll go ahead and select login on the top right of the navigation on our eCom website. From here, we'll select the blue button on the right indicating the Cvent login. From here, you will use the same credentials you were provided your first time logging into Cvent. Once in Cvent, you can navigate to the Help and Support area in the top right corner. When you click that, it will open up in a separate tab. Here you can either open a case, chat with them via instant messenger, or request a phone call. Before reaching out to these folks, I personally like to search through the knowledge base to see if I can find an article that will walk me through the steps rather than having a person do it. And that's really just your own preference. You're fine to do whatever you want. But as an example, I'll go ahead and type sessions with the idea that I know that's something that I want to do for my event, and it's my first time doing that. Pretty simple that the first article here surrounds creating sessions. When you open that up, these tutorials are so good and so straight and to the point and provide a lot of detail as well. So highly, highly encourage using these resources as much as you can. The other nice thing about submitting a case is that it will be kept in your account under My Cases in the top right corner here. So every case that I have ever submitted is listed out here, but I'll go ahead and open up one just as an example regarding wait lists. But we can see the subject I put in, the description that I asked when I submitted this case, and then you're also able to track your entire conversation. What I really love is that they point you to the same knowledge base articles that you could have searched for yourself. I'll go ahead and exit out of this tab to get out of the help and support, and I'm just brought back to Cvent to build my events. We'll use this big green button in the top right corner to create our event. To access those templates, we'll change this Create Radio button to the second option indicating using an event template. Now the option below it wants us to select what event template we're cloning. To do so, select the ellipses on the right. In the top search, I like to just start typing Flex Event. You will be presented with the same 6 templates that we looked at on our eCom website. Once you know which one you would like to clone, you can go ahead and select. The program will take a minute to copy every single aspect of that template for you to now customize. I like to keep the handling method of the emails or set scheduled emails to be manually sent instead of the default radio button. With that, you can scroll down and start modifying this information. Let's start by adding your event title. I'll go ahead and call mine New User Training.
You are required to select a category that pertains to your event. Don't worry too much about this being correct. We're not doing any analytics or things like that on it, but it is a required field. By default, English will be selected as the language, but it is nice to know that Cvent has functionality for many other languages outside of the Japanese one that's just listed here. If you have a need for that, please ask your e-com specialist. Locale will also be set to USA, but you might be hosting international events. Of course, you'll want to fill out the description of your event, which will be carried throughout many different components. I do like with Flex, you have this text editor just right there rather than having to go to a separate window. So if you wish to style this, say by bolding or controlling the alignment of the paragraph, you can do so. We'll continue to scroll down to fill out these event details, but I will highlight one thing I love about Cvent, these question mark icons that you can hover to get more information about what a field or a component does. In this case, the capacity, it lets you know once it is met for the overall event, it will automatically close. So one less thing for the event planner to monitor. I will go ahead and leave mine blank. Your when information will default to the Mountain Time Zone. You can also set your registration deadline, and again, hovering this icon with the question mark. Once that deadline is met, the form will automatically close. As Cvent's indicated here, that date is often just a few days before the actual start of your event, oftentimes to get a count to your caterer. But you can go ahead and indicate the start of your event all the way through to the end of your event. So sometimes if you're hosting a multi-day alumni event or something, a big retreat, your start and end date might cross over multiple days with sessions in between those. As we continue to scroll, we'll focus on the location. So Cvent does have a lot of other functionality, but for the most part at CU, we always use this custom location. Leaving the custom location radio button checked, you'll be able to input your address and location below. I've gone ahead and indicated a location at my office, so we can see how this populates throughout the event. Continuing to scroll, we'll make our way to the event planner. You will need to populate that first name. We'll go ahead and use my own and the last name of that event planner. I have sometimes seen folks rather want to use their department name. So you manipulate it by indicating the first name, say academic, where the last name would be affairs. By default, the email address associated in the account will be a CU Events Do Not Reply email address. And we want you to modify this to the true event planner. And in fact, you won't be able to launch your event with that do not reply email address. So that's a request you'll need to put in with your e-com specialist. But once they fulfill that request, they'll give you access to it. So you're free to select it. So if you have multiple, submit all of those requests. For this example, I've gone ahead and indicated myself, Melanie Jones at cu.edu. I continue to the last part of this page. I'll somewhat quickly review these custom event fields and what they do, but I do want to say they are very important because they are set up to integrate money. And so if you're collecting money for your event, let's say there's a charge with attending that event, this is essentially how that money ends up back in your department's SpeedTyper account. And so this is an element that your e-com specialist actually reviews before you're ever even allowed to launch an event, whether you're collecting money or not. It's very important that these fields are set up correctly. So the first one indicates your campus. And so pretty simple, wherever you're housed, please indicate that campus. It should never really change. It is not the campus that you're hosting an event at. We've had that confusion before. And all the fields after that are very much tied to that finance piece. So right now I have it set to this free event, which our forms do by default. And in that case, no speed type is required. We don't need an account code. We also don't need an allocation fund. But if you are interested in collecting money for your event, we would instead indicate a CU Cvent. And what that's going to do is allow you to select a speed type as well as an account code so that the money ends up back with you. So getting that information added to Cvent is something your e-com specialist must do. So if you're interested in having that paid event, talk to your e-com specialist about it. They'll need some information for you, they'll get it added, and then you're free to select it. And don't worry about it, they'll also review it before it actually launches. So with step 1 of filling out those event details complete, we can click the green Next button at the bottom of the screen. In step 2, you'll be selecting the event's features. And so there are many, many bells and whistles within Cvent. And this is where it really starts expanding my mind on all the possibilities on what you can manage throughout Cvent. Really, for your first time in Flex, I'd advise keeping it simple, maybe not turning on all of the bells and whistles. One thing that's important to note with Flex is that they're constantly rolling out new features. And so if there's a lock on something, it is simply not available yet. And exactly as they're telling you there. And so if you must have that feature for your event, that's a good indicator that it's not the right time for you to move into Flex. When I say turning on a feature, it is as simple as when you hover over it or on the far left, there's a little checkbox. And when you check that, it turns green. And so sessions are now turned on. I'll keep scrolling and take your time looking at all of these options. When you're in a good place, go ahead and hit next, the big green button in the bottom right. We're still on step 2 of selecting the event features. And the reason we've set up most of our templates with most of these features off is that you can really grow into them. I'll go ahead and select next, this big green button on the bottom right. So still selecting my event features. One thing that we do have turned on, that you will want to have turned on as well, are web links. So this will create a custom URL for each of your events. So it will be live right when you launch it. And that's really the link that we're embedding in our Marketing Cloud invitations. So with that, I'll go ahead and click the green Finish button. And that will have my event configuring, which should happen pretty quickly. And then I am automatically taken to my event to start really playing with those features that I enabled. So on this overview page, you'll see the location as well as the date and time. So those are all things we set up before we even configured our event. We set those event details. In the far right, you'll always see the current status of your event, and it is trying to be intuitive and take you to what would be the next status of your event. Before diving into the bottom portion of this overview page, which I think is a super underutilized feature, I'm going to try to connect this just kind of on a fundamental level, how your event is configured. So I know the navigation within Cvent can be very daunting, but truly the best way to work through it is from left to right. And so we're on the overview tab right now. There's nothing more there. But when I go to the right, hovering event details, I have a lot of things underneath that expand. And so your best way to move through it is in order. So under the general column, the first one on the left, I'm going to click on event information. And when I do that, what you'll notice is that all this stuff is already populated. That I've already set up all this event information, my when, my location, things like that. And so that step's already done. But that's also to say that if something changed, maybe your event title is slightly different, you can always go back, edit it by clicking the big green button, make your change, and go ahead and save it. So assuming our event information is good, we can go ahead and move on to the next step, being event configuration. And so the next thing you'll notice here is that we've already done it. This isn't something you have to do. But again, if you want to edit this stuff, maybe you realize you do need your task list, you can of course go ahead, hit edit, and go ahead and turn that feature on and hit save. This is also where you can control the event visibility. So by default, you're the only one who sees this event, but if you want to share it with one of your colleagues, you can go ahead and share it with individual users. I'm looking for Daniela, awesome, go ahead and save that. Looking at where I should go next, those are actually the two pieces under general that I say users should look at first. And then after that, you can move on to the planning phase. And so you'll notice if I try to click into the budget, I can't. It's grayed out, and that's because it's not enabled. I can click into tasks, and that's because I enabled it. And so when you realize that you didn't turn on any or nearly any of these features, it's a lot easier to bite off. It feels much less overwhelming in my eyes. So I'm also going to hop back to the overview page to highlight the checklist that you can see when you scroll down. And so this checklist is trying to help walk you through what your next step should be. So under event details, because I've enabled the feature of sessions and task lists, those are the two things it's trying to get me to do. And so you can also easily just click into it here, and it takes you to that exact area because you need to now create a session. And so it's pretty intuitive. If you know how to turn on the feature, just click into it and find whatever big green button is up here and start executing that task. So that's really all there is under event details. But after that, you'd move to the next tab, being website and registration. You can see there's a lot more items to do here, but frankly, it's a bit more fun. So I tend to enjoy these tasks a bit more. So assuming you've made it through whatever items you've enabled, you're good to go ahead and move on to website and registration. And so here I will highlight the two areas that you must look at for every single event. The other ones, you don't have to explore for your first event. And so under website and registration, we're going to focus on, in the first column under website, event website, and under registration, registration process. Those are the two that we're going to look at, and they actually correspond quite closely. So let's click into the event website. I just click this big green button to open the site designer. And that takes me to that summary page. And so the first time you open up the site designer, it will ask you to select a theme. It did just copy from whatever template you took, but you can absolutely modify these things. And so we tend to use this custom color scheme that's compliant with CU branding. But again, you're welcome to modify this. But after that, go ahead and say finished. So the first page that we're looking at here is that summary page, and you are able to build it out further. The template's often a good place to start, but you can also click this build button. Maybe there's other things that you want to add. Perhaps you'd rather the agenda was on this page rather than on its own separate page. Perhaps you want the registration deadline to be more prominent, so you want to bring that in. If there's elements that you want to delete, it's as simple as hovering over it and hitting the ellipses in the top left corner, or if you just hover it, you get a delete option as well as many other. So as I said, this is the fun part. Highly encourage you poking around here and enjoying yourself. If you do want to go look at the agenda page instead, you'd control that in this top left corner. So right now we're in these website pages. Remember, we're on the website, but you can just click into the agenda and see how that populates. You'd probably want to swap in a different image. You're able to go ahead and replace that. I really appreciate with Flex that you can save it before publishing it. So you can kind of simmer on it for a minute before deciding it goes public. And you can also look at a version history. So maybe you made a change that you end up not liking later on. You can always go back to it. You can also preview your website across different devices. It's another big benefit of using Flex. You don't have to do your own mobile website. It's automatically mobile responsive all the way down to that phone. So with the website components done, I'll go ahead and exit out of here. And so I'm going to toggle back to the user interface. And so we were looking at that summary page. And again, this is the website. But once they actually hit reserve your seat, they're now part of the registration process where they're inputting their first name, last name, and email. And so when you're on the Cvent side, that differentiation, so either one, you're going to go to website and registration, but before we were on the event website, well, now we're going to the registration process. And so there's different pages associated. The first being inputting your personal information, and then the registration summary, as well as the post-registration confirmation page. But similarly, you'll go ahead and open the site designer. It'll just take you to those later pages. So here's where you can have those first name, last name, email. And similarly to the other site designer, you can add other things here. So if you want your people selecting what sessions they should be doing on this page rather than having that on a whole different page, you can do that now with Flex. It can all be on one page, which is awesome. Again, you would use the top left corner to go between different pages. So right now we're in that registration process. So the next page after this would be the registration summary, which you can add things here, maybe terms and conditions. Maybe you want to ask additional information of people, things like that. You can drag any of those items in here. You really do have full control. If you don't want a page, you will have to click in the top left. Let's say this agenda page we don't want. You can click on the settings, and then the top right, there's a little trash can, and it will have you confirm that you want to delete it, and now it's gone. Of course, you can continue to save it to ensure you don't lose your work.
After reviewing the areas under website and registration of the event website, as well as the registration process, folks are generally good to move on to the next tab of promotion and communication. Let's take a step back to better understand how we approach sending event emails with e-com. And this is very specific to using Marketing Cloud in combination with Cvent. When talking about event emails, we generally break that down into 4 different categories. That first one includes pre-event emails, like an invitation or a reminder invitation. After that, bucket 2 includes post-registration emails, such as an automatic registration confirmation, a modification confirmation message, or a know before you go, a message to send a day or 2 before your event as a nice reminder. Area 3 includes declined registration emails, definitely less common, but again, you might want to confirm if someone cancels their registration or if you're collecting a regret for your event. Bucket 4 are those post-event emails. So once your event has concluded, maybe sending a thank you message, sharing photos, or asking for feedback. Those pre-event emails being an invitation or a reminder invitation is commercial in nature, which means canned spam applies. When canned spam applies, you need to, among many other things, give folks the opportunity to opt out of your messages. The ability to opt out of communications is managed through Marketing Cloud. So these messages must be sent through Marketing Cloud, or those invitations rather. And that's because you're able to apply this footer where folks can manage their email preferences. But once folks start registering for your event, these are actually considered transactional emails, that they have opted into this transactional relationship with you pertaining to this event. And so now you can send your post-registration emails, like your registration confirmation or your know before you go email, out through Cvent. And that's true all the way through your declined registration emails that we see in bucket 3, as well as those in area 4 of those post-event emails asking for feedback. Again, all of those communications are transactional in nature. People do not have to have the opportunity to opt out of those messages. Therefore, you can send these through Cvent. Let's go ahead and open up the web link section on the far left. This provides a unique web link for your particular event. So I like to take the summary URL and embed it in my Marketing Cloud invitation. When folks click register, they will be taken to a Cvent summary page. Once you've grabbed your unique web link to embed in your Marketing Cloud invitation, the next area that you would look at under promotion and communication is event emails in the second column. When taken to the event emails page, you'll notice that they can either be active or inactive. If you copied a template, the emails that are inactive are ones that you probably will never use, or the active ones are ones we would expect you to use. So even though there's a lot of emails here, you shouldn't have to look at every single one. And so the way Cvent broke this down is the same kind of way I just explained it, where those pre-event emails, which are not active, should really be sent through Marketing Cloud, not Cvent. As we move into our post-registration emails, you'll notice the ones that are active include that registration confirmation, a modification confirmation, as well as a know before you go message. Let's go ahead and open up the registration confirmation message by clicking on that name. Upon opening the registration confirmation email, you'll be taken to the Details tab. Here you can see the subject of the email as well as who it will be coming from, and the email address associated to it. To make changes here, you'll use the green edit button in the top right corner. And then you can go ahead and type in here. Data tags are also available here and will pull in information that you've already populated, such as your event time. So it's as simple as adding start in here and looking for the start date of your event and establishing how it will be displayed. Say okay. So now it says event title. I'd want to type in starts on. I can go ahead and save. To see the meat of the email, you'll want to use this big green design email button found at the top. I have now opened what's called the email designer. Similarly to the site designer, you can drag and drop different features like a button into your email, and the items that show up on that right-hand side should walk you through how to customize it. Be sure to save as you work through your emails. You can also preview your emails to see how they will display across other devices. Similarly to the site designer, in the top left corner, you can toggle between the different emails on the far left side. So maybe you want to look at the know before you go email, you can click into it from here to see the body. All templates should automatically have this table with all the registrants' details in there, which you can see is being pulled in through this current registration data tag. If you accidentally deleted that data tag, adding it back in is as simple as selecting the data tag here, searching for that current registration, and there it is again. And of course, wanting to save that. That concludes a basic introduction to using the email designer for the emails that we send out of Cvent. Go ahead and exit out of here. Get out of that email designer. Once you've built your event emails, you're actually in a place to start testing your event to get it ready for launch. To do so, I like to go back to the overview page. And in this top right corner, the current status is trying to intuitively tell you what the next step is. And in this case, it's exactly performing a test. To perform a test, I like to change the method to the second radio button to email test scenarios to other people. Next, we'll need to identify the recipients by adding recipients with the blue button here. You can either add yourself so that you can test on your own or send a test to other people. In this pop-up, you can find folks to send this test to. They might either be an account user, which means we pay for their license, and that's how you would test with yourself as well. Or we have test users. So if we don't want to pay for a license for these folks and their sole role is testing, we can add them as a test user so that you can test with them. But once you've identified whoever that is, go ahead and select them and say okay. Next, we'll need to select a scenario by clicking Add Scenario. In this new pop-up window, we will want to indicate the second radio button of a website arriving from a web link. and starting on the summary page. And that's because this is the exact same way we will be embedding that web link in our Marketing Cloud invite. So we want them to go through the same experience with the test. You're welcome to put a description in here. I'll just put test for now and say, okay. The final step is scrolling to the top to click the Start Test button in the top right, at which point we will want to confirm. Email did come to my inbox very quickly. There are certain items that you will need to rely on your e-com specialist to get added to your account. If you have folks on your team who need to do testing, but we don't want to pay for an actual license, we can go ahead and add those test users so that you can do testing with them. Similarly, report users are a free license that we can create, where if someone's sole role is exporting reports or data about events, it doesn't make sense to pay for that license. Instead, we can set them up as a report user. If you are collecting money for your events, you will need to add your finance information to the system. You'll also need an e-com specialist to add an event planner email address to Cvent, but once it's been added to the system, you are free to select it. And the final, most important piece that is required for every single event form is approval by an e-com specialist. Please connect with your e-com specialist to determine what their hard deadlines around event approval is. Once you've thoroughly tested your event and know it's good for launch, you'll need to send it to your e-com specialist for approval. To do so, you'll want to hover event details in the top navigation, and in the far left on the bottom, let's click into the event status. From this event status window, this button in the top will be slightly different on your screen than what I have. Now, mine indicates I can approve events. Yours will say send for approval. And when you click on that button, you'll have the opportunity to notify others. And this is where you can select your particular e-com specialist. So check that on the left. And then you can go ahead and add a little message in there, often around when you desire to launch your event. I'll just put test for now and go ahead and confirm that message. That process sends an email to that e-com specialist inbox, so they now know what event needs reviewed and approved. Once approved, you will need to launch your event. To launch your event, it's still on that event status page, but you'll get your final green launch event button only after it's been approved. When you launch that event, you will get one final pop-up window asking you to delete all emails collected in test mode, which I always want to do, and one final confirmation. At this point, I like to confirm that under promotion and communication and web links on the far left, if I am to copy my summary web link or URL and look at it, I expect a live registration page. It won't be until your event actually launches and folks start registering that the final two tabs of invitee management and reporting might be useful to you. One example is if Sally called you and said, I wrote down that I'm bringing Becky and I'm actually bringing my friend Jen. You'd want to go into invitee management and on the far left side under manage, look at invitees and registrants. Here is where those people will start populating once registrations start coming in. The final reporting tab, and then underneath that on the far left, looking at reports, the new versions, which are just much prettier, but really have the same data. You're able to run these different types of reports to see who has registered for my events, or are people opening my emails or clicking into them. All things that might help managing your event as it approaches. As you continue your journey in transitioning to Flex, or just with eCom as a whole, our eCom wiki is really a great resource for users. To get there, you can go to our website and then click on Help in the top navigation. Once here, you can either use the search function in the top right, but sometimes we see that folks don't know what terms to search because you're so new to the tools. And so recently we rolled out really an index of our resources as well. So I like to click into this Need Help, Start Here, which will always be the top post. And you'll notice in here that we've broken it down per application. So in this case, I will go ahead and highlight under Cvent. I'll navigate to the alphabetized category of Flex. So anything we discussed at a training, during a recording should be available here. And so if you can't find a resource that you're hoping for, don't hesitate to reach out to your eCom specialist. That will filter up to us and we'll get a resource out there, not only for you, but for others. So thank you for those value adds.